Welcome to Innovation Minutes Live. I'm Dan, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Anna. And today
Hello.
we're talking about the complete and utter lack of funding for startups with female co-founders.
Or female team members, executive team members. There was a recent study that was published in the journal Venture Capital, and it indicated that 97% of all funding goes to companies that have male CEOs, so leaving only 3% for female CEOs. And what was equally bad is that teams that have all male executive teams are 4 times more likely to get funding than teams that have any women on the executive team at all. And lest you think that it's because women are just not as skilled, they indicated, and I quote, they said, "We did not determine any significant performance differences between companies with women CEOs from companies with men CEOs. So it is quite surprising that women are still shut out of the market for venture capital funding, both as CEOs and participants of executive teams." So, and this is done by reputable research universities, Wellesley, Babson. It's the first large-scale study of its kind in a very long time. I wish more people were talking about this. I think, you know, as a woman who has gone through the fundraising process in the past, I can tell you that it's tough. In fact, one male VC who was actually supposed to be a mentor for my team told me that I should just go work for a magazine. And I have to wonder if a male CEO would have been told the same thing.
Yeah, no, I know. You know, when I read the article, it was particularly concerning for me personally, just given the fact that, you know, the work we're doing at Hack and then the project I'm working on, the startup with my sister.
Yeah.
You know, I'm basically involved with 2 female co-founders. So does this mean I cannot get funding now?
Yeah, well, that's the really bad thing, is if you're a male and you're looking at this, you're like, well, all right, the answer is clear. I shouldn't team up with any women.
Right. Yeah. So how does this incentivize me to seek out female co-founders or team members? It creates a really bad not demographic, but it's tough.
It's tough, and it's depressing. And on one hand, I'm grateful for studies like this, so that you don't have people saying, "Oh, that's just your perception," or it's self-selecting. Not as many women, you know, women are risk averse and they don't want to go into this industry. And you can see here that the numbers just don't check out to support that.
Yeah, well, this is even more damning than a lot of the stuff that's done on like corporate glass ceilings, because I think not that it's factually correct in any way, but you could make a case that, you know, in corporations, by the time a woman is of age to achieve, you know, maybe like VP level status, she may have family involvements that take her away from work, whereas a man might not have that issue. That said, the bigger issue here is that this is funding for startups, right? And a lot of, I mean, you know, as you know, and as everybody knows, a lot of startups skew younger. So a lot of times you're seeing female founders and CEOs that are way in front of the curve, where they have any kind of extracurricular distractions, if you would even call them that. So it completely invalidates that whole line of thinking, right? Where there's some sort of selection bias.
And these are people that are willing to put their other parts of their lives on hold and commit to this entirely. And the other thing that really gets me, and it didn't mention it as far as I know in this study, but I'd love to know, of the 3%, excuse me, of the 3% that are funded, how many of those are fashion related? Because, there's nothing wrong with fashion startups. I've worked in that space and it's great, but I can tell you that the perception when you are a woman, in fact, I was in this position. I was pitching a company that was in the enterprise space, and it had nothing to do with fashion. And yet on the side and in the background, I had done some fashion related stuff, and every VC wanted me to shift over to that. That was the way I was directed. And honestly, all the startups that I saw getting funded with women as a part of the executive team or as CEOs, every single one of them was somehow fashion related. So, you know,
God forbid a woman would want to start a company that actually contributes something meaningful to society. That's
right. And again, there's nothing wrong with fashion startups, but when it's like saying that men should only create video games, you know, like that's all they really like to do and are good at, you know, and that's absurd. So there are so many different realms of, in the startup world that are totally gender neutral and which skew so heavily toward men. And I guess the question is, why does this continue to persist, and how do we combat it?
yeah, and you know, it's also you know, we preach a lot about Silicon Valley, right? You know, that's where we're located. We kind of, you know, that's us, right? But you know, it's also really disappointing that Silicon Valley hasn't found a way to fix this. You know, and
Exactly.
it starts with venture capital. I mean, that's where it starts and ends. And I
Well,
feel like the VC community needs to take this on and own it, because they're causing the problem. It's nobody else's fault.
I guess the place to start would be there have to be more female VCs. You
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
kind of like the Hollywood problem. You know, women aren't written a lot of great roles in Hollywood because the studios and the people that are given the chance to do a lot of the writing are men. And so what happens when you shift that to female writers, directors, studio execs is you start to get more great parts for women. And I have to believe something similar would happen in Silicon Valley. And so maybe that's the place that it starts, not with trying to just educate all the men on, you know, not wanting just more members of the boys club, but making it, having really prominent VC firms make a commitment to having equal men and women on their executive venture capital team.
yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, the answer, you know, awareness is a big piece of it, but you know, it's not going to be solved by like an affirmative action kind of approach. It has to be much more grassroots and organic than that, right? So, you know, we know there's coding schools that are geared towards creating more women software engineers. And, you know, through that, we know that when people start building things with their hands, that's typically when a startup, you know, that's where a startup comes from. You know, so more female startup founders. You know, I think the VC firms could probably hire more analysts that are female. You know, that way the deal flow starts to equalize a little bit, and it's not just, you know, ambitious young men straight out of the Ivy League,
Right.
that are scouting for companies that are in line with what they would look for.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're over half the user base of all of the. It's not like we're a minority.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just like making movies that women will go see and enjoy should be a no-brainer. Creating companies that understand what women want and how they engage with technology and other aspects of life is key to success. And if anything speaks to these people, it's money. And so it's really hard to believe. And I don't know, you know, again, when you're only given 3% of the funding, it's hard to know.
Yeah, you know, and within that 3%, 98% will fail. You know, that's a
Right.
very small.
Just like the other ones. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we'd love to hear if you've had any experiences in this realm, what, you know, how you may have been rejected if you were trying to raise money, or if you're a VC and you think that this is not looking at the complete picture. Let us know. We'd love to know what the pushback on this is, or if you are, you know, how do you see this transforming? Because what really bums me out is the fact that Silicon Valley is so progressive and innovative in so many ways, and yet in this one, it's like they're trapped in the 1950s.
Yep.
And I think it's current biggest hurdle. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on overcoming that.
Yep. And we'll see you next week.